Hello and welcome to the AgCulture Podcast, where we share insights about the future of agriculture. Each week, we dive into the stories, technology, and ideas shaping a profitable and sustainable future for farms and rural communities alike. I'm Paul Windemuller, host of the AgCulture Podcast, and today we'll be talking with Justin Wells from Halter. Now, many of you that have listened to the podcast for a while might remember back in episode 62, where I had the privilege of talking with Craig Piggott, who is the founder of Halter, when I was in New Zealand back in February. Really enjoyed getting to see their headquarters in Auckland, New Zealand, and really had a great conversation about the big picture of Halter and how it got its start, and the story that Craig told about the technology and really as it related to the dairy industry in the New Zealand, Australia markets. So I thought I would do a follow-up episode to that now that they're up and running in the U.S., and Justin Wells is the country manager. He's the guy leading the charge for Halter here in the U.S. And they're taking a bit of a different strategy here. And I thought it would be interesting to hear a little bit more about that and also hear about a very large milestone that Halter had just achieved as well. So if you are into beef, if you are into technology, if you are into startups in agriculture, this will be a very interesting episode. Now, Justin has a pretty extensive background. Not only did he start out his career as a Marine in the United States military, he's got a lot of different experiences in technology startups. So he's not somebody new to the startup world, but I'll let him explain why he chose to come to Halter. So with that, here's my conversation with Justin Wells. Justin Wells, welcome to the AgCulture Podcast. So good to have you here today. You are another leader of the Halter team that's taking the Agtech world by storm at the moment. A lot of news going on, a lot of buzz around Halter, and really enjoyed having a conversation with Craig about 6 months ago at your home office in New Zealand. And you're the one leading the team here in the U.S., correct?
Yeah, Paul, it's an absolute just privilege to be a part of this and have this conversation with you and to come after Craig. But yeah, I look after the U.S. for Halter. I'm our country manager, so really looking after the entire success of the company here in the U.S.
And like me, I believe you're originally from Michigan, correct?
Yeah. Wait, what part of Michigan are you from?
I'm west of Grand Rapids, right along the lake shore.
Okay. I'm pretty smack dab in the upper of the mitten.
Okay, like Gaylord area, I'm guessing.
Yeah, kind of around there, yeah.
Well, what led you personally to want to jump into this journey with Halter?
That's a really good question. My background, my professional background has mostly been with software, SaaS, some hardware companies, very focused on taking something from nothing or something very very small to something larger, usually generating revenue, building teams, building things of strategic value. And I was kind of content where I was at. I had just one of my businesses on the side was just acquired. And but as somebody who grew up in Michigan, as somebody who grew up with horses, and I love to hunt, all I can think about is hunting all year round. So the days are counting down till September 2nd here in Colorado. That's my community, but I've always felt sort of my professional and my personal life has been sort of disconnected. And again, I was content where I was at. I was really at an amazing company building a really great revenue channel. And then I saw Halter pop up and I said, oh, that looks really fun. These are my people. I love this community, the rural agriculture community. My hometown was a dairy farming town. And that's what piqued the interest. Now, what sold me on it was probably the culture of Halter. We have a very unique culture that's centered around high performance. Because if you look at our customers and how hardworking they are and just a great group of people looking for technology to help, become more efficient, that was something I could get behind. My earliest career, I spent 8 years in the Marine Corps, and I'm very thankful for that. And I've always wanted to be a part of something that had that same ethos. So I found Halter and met Craig and the executive team and was like, oh my gosh, this is a team that just cares so much about the customers. And I can get behind this mission that sold me.
No, I can definitely sense that when I was in the office there in Auckland. So I can understand your perspective very well. So let's back up here. We talked with Craig on episode 62, kind of about the big picture vision of Halter. But how has Halter's expansion into the U.S. been going? What's that time frame looked like, and what's been the main focus in developing this market compared to New Zealand, Australia?
Look, entering any market with a new product, a new team, new geography is always challenging. But I think like when you have a foundation of a really good product coming from New Zealand, a product that was built on and for dairy farming operations. We obviously learned things along the way and we're able to adapt to those, but it's been pretty well. So within this year alone, we're live in 18 states. As a global business, we're getting close to 500,000 collars on cows, and I think that's just a testament to how amazing the team is and what we've built here. We're about 35 folks on the ground in the U.S. now. That's a variety of territory managers, marketing, operations, just really talented people who care about the mission. But our focus is mainly, is solely on the beef market, so pasture-based cow-calf operations. That's where the value proposition of Halter really excels. We were very targeted in the beginning, mainly focused on like Colorado and sort of the Plains region. But we've expanded since then. We're opportunistic about, partnering in California and Oregon or Missouri. But our bread and butter is really that sort of Montana to Texas, back up to Dakotas, really serving anyone who's running cattle on pasture and wants to get a little bit more out of it. So it's been great. And we have a long road ahead of us, a lot of challenges to face, but it's been awesome to see. And it's really built off of the team that we've hired here in the U.S.
I want to dig a little bit deeper into that because obviously you guys basically went from 0 to, as you said, 35 people and no time flat here in the U.S. What's that been like building that team? What are some of the challenges that you face doing that?
Building a team is always tough. You want to hire the right people as fast as possible. I personally always remember that Nick Saban quote on high performance, and you want to identify people who are going to align with our mission. Our mission is centered around really a big chunk, 50% of the inhabitable landmass being more productive and sustainable. And that is a big mission, and having people who align with that mission and they wake up and they're excited to contribute to that mission doesn't mean that there's not bad days, but when you have that passion, you have that energy, you can accomplish a lot. So it's really identifying the right people. I mean, if I look at some of the folks on our team, their families have Angus cattle ranches in Oklahoma, or, she's a very well-renowned wild horse racer in Wyoming. Shout out Emery, she's a queen. But it's just these people who care about their communities and care about the cattle ranchers and care about the mission. When you find that person, you can teach them a lot of things, but you can't teach culture. You can't teach passion. And I think we've gotten just really lucky finding those folks who are like, yep, I'm in.
How do you convince somebody like that when you do find them to say, hey, we got this new technology coming from New Zealand. We're starting basically a new business in the U.S. here. You need to come on board. And oh, by the way, you have to be very competent. You have to be very personable and probably have a good network and all of these things that seems like you might be trying to find a unicorn, right?
Paul, you just said it. Like you say exactly that. And if they say, yep, and then you found your person. I think it's like, look, I think we all long for, I don't want to say identity. Identity is the wrong word, but we all long to have a meaningful contribution to our professional work. And I think for a lot of people, especially people who've grown up in rural communities, they don't want to go work in the Bay Area of San Francisco. They don't want to go, nor maybe they might not be as successful there. So I think Halter is unique because we're affording, these folks who grew up in rural communities the ability to, one, be part of an amazing tech company. We've had a lot of success as a as a SaaS and hardware company, and but also stay in their communities. And it's you can find those diamonds in the rough pretty easily.
And I'm guessing most of the people you have on your team in the U.S. are working remotely, right?
Most of them. So we do have an office here in Colorado where we sort of headquarter ourselves. So marketing, operations, supply chain, those kind of things. But we do our best work selling to cattle ranchers where they are. We want folks who are in their community, engaging with them at everything from a FFA or a 4-H event to a field day to at the local bar even. We want those territory managers to be in that community. And I think that's what ranchers and farmers, they want and appreciate. So that team is fully remote. They're in their territories from Texas to Montana to California. And that's where we see most of the successes, again, being in the community.
This technology that you have with the collar, we'll get more into the specifics of the technology. I did touch on it a little bit with Craig in episode 62, but we'll get back to that. You're dealing with something that's a very kind of a novel concept, especially into places in the cow-calf operations, not known as the forefront of technology in agriculture in the U.S., right? So there's probably a lot of hand-holding, a lot of educating. What does it look like to build out and sell with this type of a product into that market? It's probably very different than saying, hey, here's a new vaccine that you need to use on your cattle, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and one that, we are continuing to hone on and get better. And when I say get better, it's not from a standpoint of more success. It's more better engagement with the ranchers themselves. But if you think about our product, if I'm a cattle rancher, I know that if I move my cows more frequently and I hold them tighter, the outcomes are better to some diminishing returns aspect. I get better grass. Over time, that grass compounds and becomes better grass because the soil becomes better. I utilize more grass. I can let my calves creep graze, and I get heavier weaning weights. So I know all of that is true. Now, to do that takes a lot more input. I need to hire someone else to help me move my cows that much. I may need to use hot fence to hold those cows in that area. So it's this dichotomy of we know ranchers, especially the pasture-based cow-calf operations, are migrating to that way. That's nothing new. That's regenerative agriculture. That's rotational grazing. We come in with an amazing product that helps reduce those inputs and make that rotational grazing more efficient, where I can now hold my cows in any shape, configuration, any size that's safe for that volume of cows. I can move those cows from one area to another automatically. Some of our ranchers are I'm moving my cows at 4:30 in the morning in Texas, and I don't have to get up. And when I get up to go ride out there, because we don't want to replace the cowboy, that's not what we're doing, they're able to go out there and watch their cows move and maybe, be a little bit more aware of what's going on rather than deep down in trying to just move the cows. So it's almost this supplement to something that somebody is already going to be doing. Now, to answer your question to that is, when we sit down at a table with a rancher, it's just asking questions. It's, what are you doing today? If you were a rancher, the first question I would ask is, what are your goals? Why you're here? Why are you here? What are your goals for this amazing ranch, all this land that, you're fortunate to have? And once you understand what their goals are, you ask, well, how are you going to get there? What are you doing to get there? And then, a next question we ask is, well, what's stopping you from getting there? Is it labor? Is it the cost? Is it you don't have the land to do it? You don't have the infrastructure? But the most important question we ask, and this is the most important one, is, well, what's stopping you from doing that today? And if I want to spend more time with my grandkids, or if I want to spend more time with my family, and I'm out there fixing fence, or I'm putting up hot wire, And I know that that is for the long-term benefit of my ranch, to get more from it, more grass, more, I can hold more cows. There's probably a lot of things that are stopping me, but I don't want those things to stop me. I want to spend time with my family. And I think that's the conversation that we have with ranchers. It's not, look at our product, it does this, and you can move your cows this frequency. It's just, what's stopping you from like spending more time with your family, or taking on that project that you haven't been able to do, or holding more cows. I mean, beef prices, oh my gosh, like hold more cows, carry some replacement heifers over. So that's, I think, what has been just refreshing, I think, from a sales standpoint, is just having a conversation with a rancher.
Let's go a little bit into the technology. Then I want to come back to circle back to what you were talking about a little bit more in detail. So you guys have a smart training system, or I don't know what you guys call it, cow cues, that you've developed. Can you explain that a little bit? Because I think that's one thing. Me and Craig were in such deep conversation about the big picture stuff. We kind of glossed over that and didn't really explain that part really well in the first episode we did. So if you could explain that technology side of it for us, that would be great.
I will preface with, there are 100 smarter people in Halter that can explain this. So the basics is, look, it's a hardware device, a collar that goes on the neck of a cow. And that collar, which is solar powered, so no need to change batteries, or once it goes on, it stays on, allows you to monitor where that cow is in real time. So you pull your phone up, every dot is a cow. I can see that cow. And there's some technology behind that on how frequent that updates and stuff. But this essence is, I can monitor my cows. Think, if I'm a cattle rancher in Colorado and they're up in the Forest Service in the summer, probably pretty valuable to know where your cows are. The second thing that I can do is I can contain those cows in a virtual area, just as if I were to do it with maps. So the one thing we say to ranchers is like, look, picture in your mind, if you were to remove all the fencing on your property, all of it, how would you redraw that? Like, most fences seem to go in a straight line because that's very economical. Last time I walked outside, there's not a lot of straight line water paths or trees. So it allows them to actually manage their grazing area more dynamically. So I can contain those cows in an area virtually. Then what I can do is I can actually move those cows from one area to an adjacent area. So let's say I have 100 cows in an area. I graze that down, not all the way. I don't want bare soil, but I want to have some residual. I'm going to trample it real good, 100% utilization. And then I'm going to schedule a shift the next day, early in the morning. The cows are going to receive a vibration when they're like, hey, that fresh grass is there for me to go get. And I know it's there. I'm being told I can't go through those audio cues, being guided back. And it's funny watching cows like try to graze over the line and come back, and they're smart.
Yeah, I watched that. It's pretty funny.
But I can move them to that new area. That barrier drops. They get that fresh grass, and I can do that in a very strategic manner across my land, how I actually want to use my land to my advantage. That's the essence of the product right there.
And that those cues are, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're stronger for some cows and weaker for others, depending on how the cows have reacted previously, correct?
Yeah, there's a really smart algorithm in the back. We call it a cowgorithm. It's kind of funny to say, but it's basically saying every cow is unique. And why, if I'm the most tamed, docile, mama cow, why should I get the same, reinforcement that the most aggressive hand in the cookie jar cow is going to get? So we sort of learn a cow's behavior, and we have a running, history of her interactions, and we basically adjust the interaction that she's going to receive with that collar based on her historical. So if she's one that's never going over the line, she's not going to get a big correction. Whereas somebody who's that cow, everyone has that cow, they're going to get the stronger correction.
So I was looking at a lot of dairy farms when I saw Halter the product on the cows and watched them. How is it different in the beef sector, especially on a cow-calf operation where you've got the calf along with the cow? The calf obviously isn't wearing the collar as well, correct?
Nope.
So have you adjusted things, or is there a little bit different system because of that, or issues that you've seen because of that you had to deal with and confront?
Yeah, definitely no issues. It's purposeful in that aspect. I'll preface, I do not come from a cattle ranching background, but I've spent a lot of time with that community, and I consider it my community. But I think of if I think of a dairy farm, very coordinated, like highly granular. That's the San Francisco airport. Okay. My beef operation, probably a little bit more of that dirt runway, and in parts of Nebraska, equally as important, right? But very different. The dairy product that we have that's built is meant to be extremely granular, extremely tailored for that high performance system. Our beef product is meant to be expansive. It's meant to really how a beef operation is run, which is a little less minute to minute, more day to day, more week to week. It allows us to reach further because of the communication protocols and some of the technology there. But it is specifically tailored for a beef cattle operation. Where are my cows? Can I hold those cows in an area, and can I move those cows at whatever frequency I think is best for my land? I don't need to know a lot of the stuff that we might provide from our dairy product on a beef operation. I don't need to know that. So it's very much built with specific things in mind. Now, there may be time in the future where we add features and add capabilities. That's great. But it's specifically built for that beef operation. And if I think about it, there's plenty of studies out there that say when calves are able to graze ahead of the moms, and they're able to get that fresh forage, that high protein, good grass, they're not taking big chomps off of it, but they're able to get that fresh grass. Those weaning weights start to come up and up. And again, beef prices where they are, if you can afford your calves to have that fresh forage, that's where the secret sauce is. And that's why we say, nope, calves don't get collars. We want them to have that fresh feed. They're not going to go very far. They're not going to get in trouble.
And I guess coming back to what I wanted to swing back through to on the return on investment side, is that really where you're seeing some of the best return? I mean, we talked about the intangible returns of being able to maybe go to that baseball game that you wouldn't have caught, or not having to deal with being, getting up at 3 a.m. to ship the cattle. But the dollars and cents of it needs it's an investment, right? It needs to make a return. What does that look like where you're seeing the biggest bang for the buck for the producers that are utilizing the technology right now in the U.S.?
I mean, the intangibles are amazing to hear, but I do agree. I think probably the biggest one that we're seeing right now, because also rotational grazing is a long-term gain. On the farthest end of the spectrum is the, multiple rotations on a single piece of land, letting it rest year after year. Big gains from a pasture health perspective. Those will be realized in a year or two to come. What we really see now, and we actually see ranchers doing this, is I can actually hold my cows tighter. We have ranchers who are bringing in more cows. They're actually either carrying some over, or they're actually buying in, or they're just holding their cows tighter to get more out. Maybe they're cutting some grass as hay. Maybe they got silage in the back property. So that's happening. We have ranchers who are saying, I don't need to hire as much seasonal labor. Not that we want to say, hey, we want the community to still be a part of the operation, but utilizing that labor a lot better. Fencing costs, mile of fence is pretty expensive. So we want that perimeter fence, but we can take care of all the hot fence, temporary fence, polywire, cross fencing, really allow that rancher to have that freedom of movement. And beyond that list, there's things like better water infrastructure. So I don't have to have it as much because I can draw very specific shapes. That's a very important aspect of this. I think there's also, again, how I move my cows across my land. I mean, we have ranchers who are saying, oh my gosh, let's add this to, my other herd. Let's expand it in another operation. If I'm running on like Forest Service or BLM, where are my cows? It no longer takes me 2 weeks to go get my cows. I can actually have them staged and ready by the gate for when I get there to pull them off of that block. So I look at it like there's two sides of the equation. One is like the immediate benefits that you see from an ROI perspective. Great. It's really that long-term benefit that you're going to see from that rotational grazing and impact to the grass and that utilization, which is profound.
So when I was visiting the office in Auckland, I got to see all of the iterations of the towers. And it was very interesting to hear how much the first one cost compared to how much the one was that they were just releasing at the time that I was there, right? And how they were able to really drive costs down just through innovation and really figuring out how to get it very simplistic enough that somebody could open a box and set it up in a few minutes. So how has that changed? Has that been a big game changer for you guys here in the U.S., or are there antennas that you're using and developing specifically for the U.S. market with having maybe even bigger blocks than what you see on the dairies in New Zealand?
The infrastructure itself, like the physicality of a tower, is the same. We didn't develop a new tower for the U.S. Now, again, if we get a little technical, the data that I am able to provide a dairy farmer, I might not need to have that data for a beef farmer. More data means more communication back and forth between a collar and a tower. If I have less data, I can stretch that distance pretty far. So it's a trade-off. So what we've done in the US is just made that trade-off right at that sweet spot where we can get pretty good range out of a tower. Less towers works out for everyone's best interest when there's less towers. But also, like, this is the game of just product evolution. Like, we have teams and teams who are spent on, their time and energy is focused on bettering, if it's a collar, if it's a tower, if it's, whatever it is, bettering that to maybe bring those prices down. Like an example of this is like, how we use certain communication protocols. When we change that, it actually becomes cheaper. And then we pass that savings on to the customer, which is good business. Like, good business is when you can save some money by changing how you do things, you pass that on to the customer. So I think like that's going to continue as we evolve, and as we evolve the towers and the collars and make better products. Hopefully, both the longevity of those pieces of equipment increases, but also the cost of that comes down, and we can pass some of that savings on to our customers. Because at the end of the day, again, we can't achieve a mission that we have, the 50% of the inhabitable landmass, without doing right by a lot of our customers.
One thing that I wanted to bring up was you mentioned the regenerative ag movement. There's a lot of different ideas around that terminology, right? But I always thought technology like this would be a phenomenal way to integrate some of these residue grazing and integrating cropping and livestock systems, where maybe you can graze that wheat field early in the spring and not really sacrifice too much yield in the summertime, or you've got a whole bunch of residual corn stubble out there in that field, but you just don't have the fencing to be able to graze it properly. So is that something that you guys are really focusing on, trying to dig into and encourage farms to integrate those systems more?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Like, I think the way I hear that is like both a technical and an application standpoint. So on the application standpoint, like, yes, we have a variety of ranchers and farmers today that are grazing on corn stalk stubble, or maybe, I guess this time of the year, we're not quite at that point, but maybe they're starting to hit some of their hay meadows because they've done a lot of their cutting for the year. But yeah, having them have that ability as they get into winter, doing less feeding out of hay, and actually letting them graze if it's snow covered areas, like letting them try to graze year round. And the crop stubble, don't have to put up fencing. Cows can graze it. I mean, if you think about where Halter, New Zealand, where it came from, in the winter, they graze fodder beet there, which is very calorically dense, high sugar content, root vegetable. And inches can kill a cow. Inches more of that grazing can kill a cow. We're able to, and there's plenty of videos from like the Once a Day Farmer and others where they creep graze their cows inch by inch by inch by inch across that. Having that flexibility, one, feed for cows, two, cleans up that land. But that's what it affords a rancher. And I think like from the technical aspect, there's a lot of other great software platforms that ranchers use, in their day to day. It could be, water monitoring, trough water monitoring. It could be soil monitoring. Like we know as a business, as we evolve, that we need to have a way for us to make our product plus that product equals something great. That 1 + 1 = 3. And how we evolve as a business technologically to enable that, we'll see. But it is something that we're very interested in.
One of the last things that I want to hit on here before we have to go is you guys have just hit a pretty big milestone, came through, I believe it was a Series D funding round for $100 million, and that has now closed. And I guess the company has a valuation now of $1 billion, correct?
Correct.
You guys are officially unicorn status in the ag tech world. So congratulations on hitting that milestone. That's a very big deal, especially I think over the last 3 years here with a lot of ag tech companies folding and not being able to get funding and really struggling to get through the funding round. So that's a big, big milestone. I think that just goes to show the amount of value that people see in the technology that you guys are developing and what it can do for the market. So talk to us a little bit about that milestone and what that means to you guys, and I guess why that is such a big deal.
It feels surreal. I think hopefully our customers feel equally as excited about something like this as we do. It is momentous to reach that $1 billion status. To us, it's not really about that $1 billion status. I think you could ask everyone at Halter, like, tell me about the Series D, and you'd probably get a very similar response of, great, we can go find more customers and go help more customers and help our current customers and just do more by that community. And I genuinely share in that same sentiment of like, this affords us now to reach more customers that we may not have been able to reach before. This allows us to continue evolving a product that's going to be world-class. It allows us to hire even more amazingly talented people on our team to, again, reach more customers and build a better product. And just, I guess, do more for our customers and reach our mission. And I think like knowing how hard it is to raise capital as a private business, I really do want our ranchers and farmers all around, the world at this point to know that like, that's something to be excited about. Like, we want them to be along on that journey with us. And I think this gives us that next step to like really continue delivering a world-class experience. And be able to do it with, a lot of safety. And it's in a really amazing position to be in as a business to say, this is for our customers.
And what would you say to young ag entrepreneurs out there or young people that are interested in ag tech? What advice would you give them about entering that space and especially from a business leadership side of things?
Never give up on that dream. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're someone in high school or maybe even younger and you have an idea, don't let anyone ever take that idea from you. Don't let anyone ever tell you that that's a bad idea. Let the market tell you that that's a bad idea. Hold it close and just ruthlessly pursue that dream. It as someone who's been around capital raises and being part of this one, it's like, when you have a story, people relish in that story. People want to be a part of that story. And if you can sell that story, that's what people buy into. People, yes, they'll buy into a product. The product needs to work, or the idea of a product needs to work, but it's that story that people buy into. So don't let anyone ever tell you that it's a dumb idea. Push it until the market says, no, we don't need that. And the market will tell you if it needs it or not. But also like, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to like walk up to a random rancher and just say, hey, like, what do you think about this? Like, so I think like there's just there's like a beautiful harmony in like pursuing your passion in this like unapologetic manner. Just if you think it's valuable, just go do it. Don't let anyone hold you back, because the ocean is big. There's a lot of opportunity out there.
Well, I think the statement that you made earlier in the podcast is really important too, of looking at, sitting down and talking with a rancher, what you guys do, sitting across the kitchen table from them and asking them what their pain points are, asking them what they value, and maybe not even talking to them about the product at first, but in your idea around the product, but really understanding what their need is and how that product could help with that.
Half the time, Paul, it's not even about the product. It's just purely about that. Yeah.
Right. Well, Justin, thanks so much for being here today. How can people find out more about Halter and what you guys are doing here in the U.S.?
Hopefully, you can just walk over to your neighbor's property and see a bunch of collars on cows soon. But, we have an amazing social presence, so you can look up Halter HQ, I think is most of our channels at this point. We have a great YouTube channel. A lot of our partner ranches here in the U.S. have started talking about this as well. So there's a variety of those ranches that are putting content out. Mead Ranches is one of my favorites. They have an amazing Instagram. But yeah, I think we're going to be doing field days all across the country as we ramp up. So come on to a field day, jump onto our socials, jump onto our website. Hopefully we can engage with you in different channels.
Well, I look forward to seeing where you guys go from here.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
Thanks once again for listening to another episode of the AgCulture Podcast. In this interview with Justin Wells from Halter, I really find what they're doing at Halter fascinating, and I'm very intrigued by it. Love their passion for what they're doing and the vision that Craig has for the company of Halter itself. Now, after we got done recording, Justin and I were talking, and he was mentioning that they have several field days coming up in the near future. So if you're listening to this, check them out on their social media, check out their website. And if there's a field day near you, I'm sure you'd find it fascinating to go see this technology in person. I really enjoyed seeing it when I was in New Zealand on the dairy herds that I saw there. But if I get the chance, I think I'll be checking it out here in the U.S. as well on some of these beef herds. I think that would be fascinating to see. So with that, as always, if you would share this with somebody that you know, this episode, we would really appreciate that. That's how we grow our audience. And that's how we educate and connect more people in agriculture. So until next week, I'm Paul Windemuller, and thank you once again for listening to another episode of the AgCulture Podcast.